Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay this morning. Let's try this for a second time. Always check your sound. And I know I say that that may come across as unprofessional, but I do it for my own personal thing to prevent me from doing what I just did on the last video. This is just me. I don't have any operators. I don't have anybody else helping me with this. This is literally only just me. If there are fuck-ups associated with it, I'm sorry. It's all one to me. So, what I was saying before, that you could not hear me at all when I was saying it, I'm going to have a birthday show coming up on August 31st. My birthday is August 31st. I'm going to be 41 years young. And at the right young age of 41, I'm going to have a show. We're thinking about like a birthday bash. I don't know what we're going to call it. The Thomas birthday bash or the Soapbox birthday bash or the Soapbox birthday something. But I think it'll be a good idea. I think it'll be fun. Maybe have a longer format, maybe like a 2-hour show with multiple segments within the show itself. Kind of like if it was doing like a radio broadcast. So that's going to be on my birthday, August 31st on Friday. I don't necessarily know the exact time for that. I would get that either today or tomorrow to nail that down. On that day, oddly enough, that will also be the same day where the partnership allows me to re-enter or potentially to reapply for monetization on the channel again. It's been 30 days. We'll see what happens. Now, that said, either way, whether the monetization or not, still give me your ideas of what you want the show to be on Friday. The birthday show may just be the patron show. I may just combine both of those things together and have like a 2-hour bash for my birthday and leave that on Patreon for my patrons. There will be a t-shirt award for that one also. My wife is starting to help me with the patron thing. Because again, doing all this, it becomes a bit much. But going forward, for the month of September and as far as the eye could see, I think we're going to do the patron choice thing every week. I'm trying to find content for my patrons, and I like that idea of giving the patrons a choice on what we talk about and essentially have a show and leaving that show on Patreon for them. I've been looking for something, thinking of something, and just so happenstance, I think this is a good idea. And I think the people liked it. People showed up for it. There may be more content added to Patreon also as I kind of start getting more focused or oriented in that direction. I don't like talking about the money stuff. And so I'm always fidgety when I have this conversation. While at the same token, realizing it's just kind of part of the business. My goal in this is to not be dependent on Patreon. I'm sorry, not to be dependent on YouTube. So even if you enjoy the content, if you love the content, if you find yourself coming back here and you can contribute $1, please considering doing so, either through Patreon or PayPal. The content will be available for everyone on Patreon. I need to figure out how to make it available for the people on PayPal. And maybe that's putting it on a special website and allowing people to access it. Either way, I'll make sure if you contribute, you'll be able to access the specialized content. So there's that. And one last announcement. The link above goes to Streamlabs. Instead of using Super Chat, an alternative to Super Chat, there's a link in the description box that you can click if you enjoy the content and would like to give during the show. That's not a push. That's just a heads up. So there's that. Let's get to the content. I am in the shower this morning, and this is not going to be lewd. I'm in the shower this morning, and something hits me. Because I've been extremely skeptical of what's been put forward by the Super Delegates thing. I think I even said it in the other video, that I was extremely skeptical of this because from a political standpoint, oftentimes, if you can give something away without give something away, that's your best political option. And up to this point, there's been nothing to get across any impetus or any idea that Democrats were going to give anything away, even though it was kind of understood that things were being ripped from them, at least from the standpoint of the language and the political force of lefty ideas, in which they felt that they needed to, at the very least, don the image of those ideas in order to propagate themselves. Meaning they felt At the very least, that they needed to say certain things. It's the difference between winning the argument versus having the mechanics itself. The mechanics itself coats itself in the language of the people who are going after the mechanics itself, if that makes sense. Look at this. And of course, this has to do with the superdelegates thing. My argument in this is that the superdelegates thing is a scam. It doesn't mean anything. You've got something without have gotten anything. The United States considers itself freedom and justice and spreading liberty across the world. Is it? Was the Soviet Union the socialist, society? No, it wasn't. It was state capitalism. No more than the United States spreads freedom and justice. People coat themselves in certain language while at the same token casting other people in other language that you find to be politically advantageous. I'm saying that's what's taking place here. The language that people are using, either from the standpoint of Democrats, either from the standpoint of groups like TYT on the left, is politically advantageous. They want to get across that they've won something, in which case they chest thump this as if it's a win. The Democratic Party wants to get across that they've given something away, in which case they act as if they're angry and aggrieved by this. This is theater. TYT has said it themselves on their website that the goal was to unite. CNN, MSNBC, all of these groups, for the most part, are against Trump. All of these groups are in the bag for Democrats. Let's be honest. They've taken what the Democrats have said from the standpoint of the Russian nonsense whole cloth. They've considered Donald Trump a menace. Of course, TYT is MSNBC light. MSNBC is just MSNBC. And CNN, for the most part, has had a bias going towards corporate interests. And, let's be honest, against Trump. All of them have pushed this as if it was this big historic thing. And I'm saying all of that is nonsense. They've won nothing. Problem with TYT being so in the tank with the Democratic Party and so in the tank with Justice Democrats is that they have a dog in this hunt and the way they get across the language and talk about this particular issue. You are being scammed. That's what I am telling you. You are being scammed. Look at this. And I'm going to do my best to make this argument. But I think the argument is more right than now. This is Sanders. This is one of his campaign ads. I just want to get something across to you. I would love for this to be a blaze one if you got one, because I would love for you to be somewhat buzzed as you listen to this. But if you're a lefty, I think you'll get what I'm putting down.
When we talk about morality and when we talk about justice, we have to understand that there is no justice when so few have so much and so many have so little. There is no justice when the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. Millions of people are working long hours for abysmally low wages, working hard, but unable to bring in enough money to adequately feed their kids. There is no justice when the United States of America has the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. How can we talk about morality, about justice, when we turn our backs on the children of our country? We have in this country sufficient amounts of money to put more people in jail than any other country on earth. But apparently, we do not have enough money to provide jobs and education to our young people. We are the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. All of God's children, the poor, the wretched, they have a right to go to a doctor when they are sick.
I want you to think of what this great country can be. We can be a nation which join other nations around the world in guaranteeing health care to all people as a right. We can be a nation in which working parents can get quality, affordable child care.
That is probably one of my favorite campaign ads. And not just favorite campaign ads, it's a campaign ad that just says, hey, what if we just be honest? Just tell the truth. Who knew truth as a political objective or as a political weapon? And he went from state to state to state to state, just saying, here are the problems in this country and here are the things that I want to do to solve it. And yes, I call myself a socialist. I'm here. The Democratic Party didn't think this was going to be real opposition and didn't care. Listen to some of the interviews towards the beginning of the process. Listen to some of the interviews with the people in his campaign. They didn't think this was going to be a real campaign until shit got real. He pushed them to the left. And you can make an argument that he won the argument even though he lost that race. Here's the question. In 1 year, how did all of those people who love this man, I mean people weeping and bawling at the campaign rallies, how did you go from somebody who's generating this much compassion, this kind of outpouring of energy into people, into turning into this?
Right now, we have got to defeat
It's 1 year.
Donald Trump. And we have got to elect Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine.
What is it like to be Bernie Sanders at that moment? And why do you go from a situation where 20, 30, 40,000 people are cheering, rallying after this particular guy, and all of a sudden within a year or so, booing? Booing. They're booing him because they love him. And in an odd way, it sounds with a certain irony, hate to see him essentially go for the person that cheated him. All of those people who are out there know full goddamn well that Bernie Sanders was cheated in that race. And in knowing that Bernie Sanders was cheated in that race, and hearing that exact same Bernie Sanders say, you need to support the person that cheated me and that cheated you, it breaks you. It's too much. Now that's for Sanders, but what about the party that did it? And then that turned around, and then lost an election to Donald Trump. That party has problems. Part of that party's problems is that it lost the argument. Look at this. This is CNBC, no friend at all to lefty ideas. 70% of Americans now support Medicare for all. The guy who just got elected recently, or that won the primary, he won on the platform of legalization of marijuana, Medicare for all. This was in Florida. Sanders campaign on education. Person after person, when you go across the country from the standpoint of the Democratic Party, he's won that argument. Even though, no, he lost the race. People who've been running to that particular area have started to coat and don themselves in this particular language. Even this tamp down, I would argue, on social media, to some degree has to do with the populist ideas that Sanders has been pushing. It is a backlash. So what do you do, and how do you deal with the backlash? The Democratic Party's way of dealing with this, up to this point, has been to lie, to say that you weren't cheated, or vassal back and forth between this idea of cheating, that says it's just a perception issue. Tom Perez continuously says this is just an issue of perception. This is just an issue of perception. Missing the point. Donna Brazile recently. This is just an issue of perception. all missing the point that they took active steps in order to put a knife into somebody that was running in that race, while at the same token saying that the race was fair and just. Whatever of degree of cheating you want to say existed, you have to admit that it existed. Even if you want to take the argument that, well, the cheating didn't matter because it didn't change the outcome, but at the very least, let's acknowledge that there was cheating in that process, while simultaneously telling people that the race was being fair and balanced. The Democratic Party has lost millions of dollars. They've been drained. People are pissed. How do you deal with that? Millions of lefties leave your party. How do you deal with that? You at the very least have to acknowledge that all of these people have left your party, even if you don't want to do anything about it. And the very fact that you've taken on the language means you acknowledge that what you're pushing forth as a party is not necessarily, it's toxic. It's toxic. If I want to really believe that the Democratic Party is to some degree changing, you wouldn't purge Sanders supporters after the election. You wouldn't go through various states and various counties, choosing your representatives and putting your thumb on the scale in the various states in order to make sure that the ideas of the Democratic Party get propagated, as opposed to having ideas from the grassroots take over. At the very least, however, the Democratic Party had to acknowledge that there were problems. The Unity Commission was the acknowledgement of problems. Now, my argument was that the Unity Commission was a dog and pony show in order to quelch the people being pissed off, to mend that rift. And you have various outlets out there that are propagating and doing what they need to do. Not propagating, they're pushing this idea to mend the rift without saying that they are out there to mend that rift. Looking at TYT. In order to mend this, the dog and pony show, they came up with results. Now, if you remember, early in the beginning, the two things that Sanders was strongly pushing for was getting rid of superdelegates and open primaries, because both of those things, to some degree, was a thorn in his side. The superdelegates, from the standpoint of optics, making it look as if Sanders has no chance of winning, and secondary, the idea that they kept out a lot of people who Sanders wanted to get into the race, meaning people who were supportive of Sanders who didn't have the capacity or the ability to vote. So one of the things that they've come up with was Democrats take a big step to a smaller role for superdelegates. Now, the big step that they're talking about is neutering superdelegates for the first round. That superdelegates wouldn't be able to vote in the first round. Now, you have people angry and upset, but let's be very clear. How many superdelegates have they gotten rid of? 0. How often have superdelegates been used in the races in real terms, meaning applicable? 0. That's a 0. That's a goose egg. They've given something that they've never used. That's the first point. Second point. What is the role and the point of superdelegates in the first place, right? If we're going to have this conversation about the role of superdelegates. And one more point. Yeah, let's keep going with that. What is the role of superdelegates in the first place? Let's ask Deborah Rossman Schultz. She'd know, right? She was head of the organization.
To Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire by 22 percentage points, the biggest victory in a contested Democratic. Hillary Clinton lost to Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire by 22 percentage points, the biggest victory in a contested Democratic primary there since John F. Kennedy. But it looks as though Clinton and Sanders are leaving the Granite State with the same number of delegates in their pockets, because Clinton has the support of New Hampshire's superdelegates, these party insiders. What do you tell voters who are new to the process, who says this makes them feel like it's all rigged?
Unpledged delegates exist really to make sure that party leaders and elected officials don't have to be in a position where they are running against grassroots activists. We are, as a Democratic Party, really highlight and emphasize inclusiveness and diversity at our convention, and so we want to give every opportunity to grassroots activists and diverse, committed Democrats to be able to participate, attend, and be a delegate at the convention. And so we separate out those unpledged delegates to make sure that there isn't competition between them.
I'm not sure that answer would satisfy.
That answer made that was the most ridiculous answer, but it was honest. Hey, we do this in order to stop grassroots from running against our candidates. We don't want our candidates to run against grassroots. We want to keep the grassroots out of this process. Then I think at some point she realized, oh, holy shit, I just said we're keeping grassroots out of the process. I mean, we allow grassroots to do something. I mean, we just don't want them to run. That's the point of superdelegates, to essentially to choose the candidate. We don't want them to be able to do X. Now, here's the other part. If that's true, is what took place negating that? Right? If you're telling me that we've made gains, or that the party has made gains, the party has made great strides, then what you just told me, where is it? I have a lot of browser stuff. Damn it, where is it? I'm sorry, guys. There it is. Yeah, then if that's true, then if we've made great strides, then getting rid of or neutering the superdelegates for the first round should allow the grassroots more inclusiveness into the process. Here's the catch, though. What they agreed upon was this. It's worse. Believe it or not. DNC killed caucuses, keeps superdelegates, retains joint fundraising agreements. That was the agreement that Hillary Clinton signed with the DNC that gave her essentially full authority and control over the DNC. Expands controls over the 2020 primaries. Now, right here. Let's see. The DNC took several steps to expand and consolidate its power over the 2020 presidential primary at its summer meeting in Chicago this week. The party reduced caucuses. If you remember, caucuses was the thing where Sanders did good at. They got rid of those, or eliminated them, or cut them down, which heavily favored Bernie in 2016, replaced them with primaries. I'm not necessarily against the replacement of caucuses with primaries. My issue with that more so has to do with, if Sanders did well at those things, then yeah, I would imagine that they would be okay with either getting rid of or reducing those things. So that's the first point. So that's not necessarily something that benefits Sanders, at least from the standpoint of 2016. And if you're looking at this in the context of Democrats trying to expand on their own advantages, yeah, getting rid of the thing that the person did well in would fall into that category. It rebuked progressive demands to eliminate superdelegates, moving them to the second round of voting. It preserved the use of joint fundraising agreements that Hillary used to launder money, right? It approved a rule allowing the DNC to block candidates who have not been faithful to Democrats. Right there. I went over this earlier. They implemented a rule that would allow the DNC chair to nix the campaign of somebody who's not been sufficiently loyal to the Democratic Party. Right here. Block candidates who have not been faithful Democrats from the running. Understand what that means. So the superdelegate process was there right off the bat to prevent the grassroots from essentially fielding the candidates in a way that would really challenge their own candidates. Okay, we're going to put that into the second round, even though it was never used in the first round to begin with, outside of an optic standpoint. But we're also going to allow a provision that would allow the DNC chair to do the same thing. In using the subjective term of faithfulness. Have you been faithful? If they are putting something in policy that's purely subjective, then the whole point of it is to be subjective. That the chair can use it for whatever ends that the chair want to use it, and giving them a wide latitude with which to use that. What does it mean to be faithful? And what does it mean to be a faithful Democrat? I'll leave it with that. What does it mean to be a faithful Democrat? I'm making the point to you that relegating one edifice to the second round and implementing another edifice is not the same thing as making progress, especially when the thing that they gave up was something that was never used in the first place. You weren't given anything. When you were given optics of a win, you weren't given necessarily a win. And the progressives are chest thumping this because they want to chest thump. It's like the Soviet Union calling themselves socialist. Yeah, you would want to call yourself socialist because you want to accrue yourself to that. Don't get me wrong, they've had victories, meaning lefties have had victories. I'm not quite sure this is one of them. I say it that way. And this is just an opinion. I could be wrong. But I'm making an opinion. And this is the gentleman that wrote the book Shattered. Listen to what Tom Perez was told.
The DNC is unpopular with its own base. Half of the Democratic Party, or roughly half the Democratic Party, felt like the DNC was unfairly tipping the scales in the last presidential election, trying to get Hillary Clinton nominated, trying to hurt Bernie Sanders. So you start with that bad blood. And really, there's just been a clash between these two sides that has resumed. The hostilities that had been put aside at the Democratic Convention in 2016 resumed the minute that Donald Trump was elected. This huge battle for the soul of the Democratic Party between the Clinton-type folks and the Sanders folks. And Tom Perez is in the middle of that, and he's gotten very explicit instructions from President Clinton, as we write in the paperback extension of the original book. He's gotten instructions from Bill Clinton not to let the party go to the Bernie Sanders folks.
My conjecture is that he hasn't. Tom Perez has followed orders. This is not letting it go to the Sanders folks. This is not giving much of anything. This is giving an optics win, if you want to call it a win. But what have you actually really have gotten? At which point were the superdelegates ever used? Now, I understand from an optics standpoint, I will give you this. When superdelegates gets lumped into a particular race, it makes it as if that person's lead is insurmountable. From a psychology standpoint, there have been studies on this. People tend to lump in with what they think is going to be the winner. It's odd, but it's something that people do. It's not a cognitive bias. It's people look around to other people for an understanding of the world. It's like an affirmation of the crowd. The crowd says X. You might think Y, but you're more inclined to go along with X because the crowd said X, and you look to the crowd for your understanding of the world. In reality, it makes you feel safe. It's something that people do. So if one person starts off with a magnificent lead, it makes people more akin or more in line to lumping in with that person. It's the reason why part of social media attacks is to go after people, making it seem like there's a crowd on a particular side versus another side. It's why when Hillary Clinton was giving those elections at a doghouse, and you had like 4 people standing around, they would crowd the camera in to make it look as if it's crowded, as opposed to when you pan out and it's like 4 people and a dog. They do that stuff for psych reasons. So that part's fair. Do we believe that the media won't just ask the very next question of, if this goes to the second round, who will you vote for? Now, I will give you this. From an optics standpoint, fair enough. But this was never used. This was never used. You were given something that was never used. And the entire point of the thing that you were given has been reestablished and solidified in some other area of the political doctrine of the DNC. So, yeah, second round. No, they were never used, but okay, just in case they would be used, second round. However, the DNC still can get rid of somebody if they're not faithful. Yeah, I'm skeptical. I am not impressed. We're continuing to rig it. We're just going to rig it less. You should be happy that we're just going to rig it less. I am not ecstatic that you're going to rig it less, nor are you going to get a pat on the back on me for rigging it less. Those superdelegates still exist. The lobbyists still exist. The people who are bribing them still exist. I'm just saying the DNC hasn't changed. And acting as if the superdelegates thing is this great big, triumph. All of those superdelegates still exist, and all of those primaries are still close. My scale hasn't changed. So, creative experiments. Jamal, why are you surprised that the DNC cheated Bernie? You mean at the time, why was I surprised? Well, if somebody is looking at you saying we are being fair and earnest, and you're realizing that they're not being fair and earnest, it's a little in your face to be blatantly cheated and then lied to while you're being cheated. This is the same party that never owned up to cheating Sanders. So, just saying. All right. Let's see. Oh, wow. We have a crowd. Democrats need to ask whether red line to leave the party. Mine was removed in the public option in 2010. I left before Obama's second term. Were you surprised that the DNC cheated Sanders? Yeah, I was. Yes, I was. Gee, I'm beginning to think that everyone loved their power and don't want to give it up. Duh. Yeah, right. Right. All these orgs that tried primarying the establishment have not changed the Democratic Party. No, they haven't. But you must understand, all of the organizations want to get some level of credit for giving the perception that they have. And the Democratic Party wants to take on the perception that they have. I hope you understand what I mean by this. The propaganda in this is advantageous to both sides. One side wanting to give the perception that they've changed, and the other side wanting to give the perception that they've changed them. I'm skeptical that any of this has taken place. You've had one primary challenger that's won in Florida. You've had another one, Ocasio, that's won in New York. You've had a few more victories in some other areas. So you've had lefties win in some areas. But taking down establishment Democrats, I haven't seen it. Nor have I seen the party take on the major shifts. I've seen some of them take on Medicare for all in this kind of tepid way, but taking it on when you have a Republican in office as a president, House, Senate, and Supreme Court is not necessarily all of that a courageous act. I mean, come on. I will believe it when I see it. And right now, I have not seen the necessary change in the party that people are telling me it was going to take place. Just saying. And I don't have this idea that this stuff happens overnight, so don't misunderstand me. And I'm not of the belief that it is impossible. If everyone at the DNC lost their job tomorrow, fair enough. But the way we're talking about this now, this is nonsense. They've strengthened their control over the party, not lessened. And while strengthening a control over the party, they've sold you as if they somehow lessened it. Yeah, all of those superdelegates still exist. No, those superdelegates aren't necessarily going to vote on the first round, but the superdelegates weren't instrumental in the process at all anyway. It was only instrumental from the standpoint of optics of who they may vote for. They don't vote until after everyone else votes. I hope that makes sense. Like, the media is still going to ask that secondary question of, if this goes to the second round, who you're going to vote for. This idea of support is still going to be there. That's not going to evaporate. I don't know why they think the media is not going to ask a secondary question. But we will see. And the media companies are throwing this up as if it's a win. I imagine that lefties do want to win, so tepid applause. But this is not the 60-70% reduction, nor is this the opening of primaries. So, all right, let's see. This one has gone way too long, but let me check, because somebody was nice enough to make me aware that my channel was no sound. Always check your sound. Always check your audio. Yeah, always check your audio. Agreed. All right, I'm going to end this. I have a few more shows. If people are talking about the superdelegates without engaging in this, well, you may even call it to some degree a power grab of the person at the top, sufficiently faithful to the Democratic Party. They put that in. Nobody knows what that means. I have no idea what that means. And it's going to mean whatever whoever's in charge want it to mean. It's going to mean what they want it to mean. If you're on a talk show talking bad about the Democratic Party, even if you should be talking bad about the Democratic Party, maybe you're not allowed to run. Maybe that Keith Sanders or whoever else maybe wants to run in line for breaking the quote-unquote faithful rule, whatever the faithful rule stands for. It's not a win. It's not a win. Hey, Jamal, what about the Indian guy running against the fake Indian in Massachusetts? Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. It's like Facebook terms of service agreement. That's exactly what it is. Tim Flowbug. Yes. Yes, it's like a terms of service agreement. It's like saying, well, Jamal, you did X, so now we can steal your earnings for next week. Or for last week. Or you did Y, so we can just get rid of you. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. That's exactly what it's like. All right. I'm going to end this here. party is atrocious. It's utterly atrocious. And chest thumping in its benefit when it's given tepid, yeah, no, not so much. I'll end it here. All right, guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. Remember to send in what you want from the standpoint of video titles or video topics through Patreon. At the last video that was done, I'll look over them and we can figure out what we want to do for Friday. There will be a birthday bash on Friday. My birthday is on Friday. And so I'm probably going to have an hour or 2 hour show with multiple topics in that show. So definitely join me for that show. Also, again, I've said this before at the beginning of the show. I'm probably going to say it once at the beginning and the end. I'm trying to pull myself or requiring the monetization less. So if you enjoy the content, only if you enjoy the content, if it's something that you find yourself coming over and over and over again, if you can assist through Patreon or PayPal with like $1 or so, please consider doing so. It's not a push. It's just a heads up on what the show is trying to do. And I will see you guys probably in the next 10 minutes. Thanks, guys.